Very good. If okay with you all, I'd like to get us started. First of all, welcome to everybody to this AfricaConnect3 Infoshare. I think most people, if not all in the room, know me. I'm Tom Fryer, Head of International Relations at GÉANT, and it's within the International Relations team that the AfricaConnect project on the GÉANT side is managed. So what we have this afternoon is an info share, a public info share, which is being recorded. And please note that for those of you that we've been having some chatter now, we will remove that part before we publish the video online. So this element is to share information on the AfricaConnect3 project, specific activities that are being carried out within that, and in particular this new area of advocacy and donor engagement. We've got participants from GÉANT. We have Stephanie from DevCo who has joined us, and we did see some registrations from outside the GÉANT membership that I don't see any of them having joined yet. And this was from some of our African partners. So welcome to you all. Just for clarity, at GÉANT, the AfricaConnect3 team is made up of a number of individuals. Leila, who will be presenting today, is project manager and also leads on our contacts directly with UbuntuNet Alliance and WACREN. We have Helga, who also is involved in project management of AfricaConnect3 and is our lead contact for ASREN and our North African partners. We have Vanessa, who is who coordinates and is delivering on advocacy and donor engagement. We have Sylvia, who works together with the communication staff at the African NRENs on communication activities for AfricaConnect. And we have Phil Matthews, who works on our the procurement side. I think that's the main characters. David West and I also provide some support in the background. So there's two main parts to this meeting. The first is a presentation that will be given by Leila and Vanessa, after which we'll have a general question and answer session and any comments. That will be recorded and made available online afterwards, as I've already said. This will then conclude the info share as such. And what we then intend to do is have a session for the GÉANT members with GÉANT on our working practices together on potential involvement and activities that are being run with the African partners or in Africa to help us coordinate our efforts, look for synergies, etc. So that's the two sections. So we'll start now with the presentation, which will have 4 sections in total. Leila will take us through a scene setting part, and then an overview of the project and European NREN involvement in AfricaConnect3 and AfricaConnect related activities, and then Vanessa will cover advocacy and donor engagement. I'd also like to remind you that we have these GÉANT info shares on a regular basis to create a space to engage, improve knowledge sharing, etc. among the research and education community. They're organized by the partner relations team within the community, the GÉANT community program. We have public info shares always on Wednesdays that are recorded and made available online afterwards, and then other info shares that can be organized as invitation only, as workshops, etc. Main info shares are on the wiki page, and you can go there to suggest future topics. And recordings are available in the eAcademy, the GLAB website, and on the wiki pages after the event. For any questions in general, please reach out to partnerrelations@géant.org, partner-relations@géant.org. So with that, I'd like to thank you and thank Leila and Vanessa in advance for their presentations, and hand over to Leila.
Thank you very much, Tom. So, as indicated previously by Tom, I will be starting with setting the scenes of NRENs in Africa, and assume that not all of you know what the scene is like in Africa. Thereafter, I'll be introducing the AfricaConnect3 project and how currently European NRENs are engaged with AfricaConnect3 and with African NRENs. So there are more than 100 NRENs around the world, and 38 are located in Africa. A little bit like we organize ourselves in the GÉANT community, We have 3 regional networks in Africa, which are ASREN, WACREN, and the UbuntuNet Alliance, respectively responsible for different regions. So ASREN is in charge of North Africa, but also the Middle East. WACREN is in charge of the East, of the Western and Central Africa, and UbuntuNet Alliance is responsible for the Eastern and Southern communities in Africa. So these 3 regional RENs have been established little by little. They have different levels of maturity and have been supported fundamentally by 3 EU-funded projects: AfricaConnect, AfricaConnect2, and AfricaConnect3. AfricaConnect being firstly only supporting the Eastern and Southern partners, so the UbuntuNet Alliance. AfricaConnect2 saw the 3 regions being brought together in order to have a first Pan-African project, and the AfricaConnect3 project is also similar. It is to be noted that GÉANT has been supporting these 3 partners since the beginning, so since 2011. So it is a Pan-African network in the making. So out of the 38 NRENs that exist in Africa, currently 19 are connected to their respective regional backbone, and respectively are peering with GÉANT, so connected to the wider R&E community. African NRENs have had quite a significant impact in the past years, well, the past 3 phases of the project. African NRENs are connecting over 1,900 institutions that represent approximately 5 million users. They also have tried their best and strived to connect universities in remote areas, but overall, NRENs are trying to continue to foster the knowledge society and provide adequate connectivity and services to end users, as they believe that any students or researcher in Africa could actually be the person bringing the world's biggest innovation. We have lots of case studies of the impact of African NRENs on our AfricaConnect3 website. I would highly invite you to go and have a look if you want to have any further information. Now getting to the AfricaConnect3 project. It started on the 16th of November 2019, and it has a 4-year period. It is financed by the European Union, and we have 4 different grant contracts, and I will get to this point later. The overall envelope of money is 37.5 million euro, with a co-funding of 80% from the EU and 7.5 million remaining funding that we need to co-fund, as well as 23.2 million euro is dedicated to connectivity, equipment, and cloud. We have 1 overall objective, which is to enhance human capital development in Africa, but our specific objective is actually to unlock the potential of education and research through increased access of African education and research institutions to digital infrastructure and technologies. Concretely, how do we do this? We do this at 4 different levels, and I will explain to you our 4 different work packages that are actually aiming at achieving those 4 outputs I'm introducing to you now, which is first, connectivity, second, services, third, capacity building, and fourth, and last but not least, and Vanessa will focus on that at the end of the presentation, outreach and advocacy and donor engagement. I was saying 4 contracts, 4 clusters. This is new in comparison to AfricaConnect2. So if you were familiar to the previous project, this is really good news because it's moving towards more sustainability for the regional partners that are now responsible for mostly everything. They're responsible for managing their regional network. They're responsible for expanding the services and the provision of services to their communities. They're responsible for capacity building in their region, engaging with end users, and raising the awareness of the role of digital transformation for education and research. GÉANT comes there as a partner and supports them with procurement of connectivity, overall coordination, and ad hoc support when required. We also have we also provide support in advocacy and donor engagement throughout the 3 clusters and in communication. So 4 clusters and a fair, well, I'd say clear split of roles and responsibilities. The first work package is expanding high-speed network in order to ensure that end users will continue to benefit from secure, adequate, and affordable network infrastructures. REN will ensure the day-to-day operations. So this is ASREN, UbuntuNet, WACREN managing their backbones. And GÉANT will support the expansion of the network. So we will make sure that we have relevant upgrades taking place, but also are connecting countries that so far have not been connected to their regional backbones in Africa. There's different sub-activities that are also referred here to, such as remote support to network beneficiaries, direct engineering assistance, but also GÉANT could be hosting, for example, some network engineers from the African region in Ornoc, whenever travel will be possible again. So there are a lot of small sub-activities, but the two main activities in this work package is maintaining the network and expanding the network. I will give you a bit of an update on the different networks. So far, the Ubuntu Net Alliance has the most connected countries, but also one of the biggest region. And their potential intentions for the coming 4 years in the coming 4 years are to upgrade their backbone in Somalia. So this should happen very soon, but also try to connect multiple countries from the list below: Angola, Botswana, Madagascar, Mauritius, Namibia, Ethiopia. I was explaining earlier on that it was a 23.4 million euro budget. So we will see how far we can go with the amount of resources that are being allocated. But this is what Cluster 1 is intending on doing in the next 4 years. Cluster 2, currently we have 3 connected countries, so Ghana, Nigeria, and Togo, and upcoming countries to be connected to the WACRIN backbone are Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, and Mali. It is to be noted that Côte d'Ivoire is already connected, but they just have to finalize their equipment. Well, the equipment needs to be installed, so Côte d'Ivoire should be connected very soon. Likewise with Burkina Faso, that I think we're at the last phase. So in the coming weeks, I'm quite confident that Burkina Faso will be connected to the backbone. Last but not least, so our regional partners in the North African countries. So they are currently all connected at different speeds. And what AfricaConnect3 will be doing is actually upgrading those links and hopefully having dedicated links for Tunisia and Morocco. So tenders have started for Tunisia and Algeria. Algeria was finalized, so the upgrade should come up soon. Tunisia tenders have started, so we will see where things go. And for Morocco as well, we were quite advanced in the process, where we have sent some memos and we are starting the preparation work in procurement. Our second biggest work package, or fairly big work package, is okay, you have the connectivity, but then what's next? I know I'm preaching convince people because you're all from the NREN community, but so the African partners really want to focus on expanding GNI services with some service outreach workshop to understand where they can use some GÉANT services or services that already exist, but also develop more trust and identity services. So we will work more with, they will try to expand the reach of EduRoam and EduGAIN, as well as what was not really included in AfricaConnect2 is cybersecurity activities and federated identity management for libraries, where WACRIN is really leading on and where they're doing quite remarkable work to lead for the other clusters and ensuring that we have relevant trust and identity services for librarians. I was talking earlier about EduRoam. We still can do way more in Africa on EduRoam EduRoam access and reach. So currently we have 17 African countries connected with 6 pilots in countries. We of course aim to expand the reach to other countries, but also within the countries we already are present to expand the reach to more institutions. The third pillar, or the third work package for AfricaConnect3, is capacity building for research and education. This goes into, there are multiple layers of capacity building. One is at the NREN level itself with governance and systems review and sustainability plans. The other one is more at a NREN management level, where we have NREN management academies sharing NREN best practices. And then as well, we have this more operational level that is also essential, which is ensuring that we have good training in network operations, cloud, TNI services, and a very strong focus is being done during AfricaConnect3 on women engagement and empowerment. For example, there'll be a dedicated session at the Ubuntu Net Connect Ubuntu Net conference next month, but also WACRIN is doing quite a lot of activities with women hackathons and with the Women in WACRIN program. Last but not least, engaging and disseminating. I will refrain from making any comments on this topic as it will be further developed by my colleague, but this is essential, and this is also where we have decided to put more focus we have decided to focus more in AfricaConnect3. As Stephanie said earlier in the call, we have been selected to the Paris Fees Forum, so we're trying to be slightly more strategic with the way we communicate and engaging with high-level international organization and try to advance policy change, but also secure more funding for the communities in Africa. Now, how do European NRENs connect? How do we make sure that how do we work with each other at the moment? What involvement is already taking place? So one element that some of you might be aware of, because they are associate partners in the project, is that European NRENs are actually, under AfricaConnect3, associate partners to the UBuntuNet, WACRIN, and ASTRIN contracts, which means they can provide direct support. It could be trainings, it could be licenses for Zoom, or it could be, or like agreement, well, support, technical support. This has been discussed, or is being discussed, between the NRENs in Europe and the regional partners. And an example of involvement was, for example, in October 2020, WACRIN had an NREN Management Academy that several of you attended, and that was chaired by Renater and by DFN. And I guess there was also a guest speaker from CNET. So there are a lot of interactions going on between African RENs and European RENs. And how do European NRENs are involved in the AfricaConnect project from a GÉANT perspective? Well, all the European NRENs, as such, we call it European NRENs, are listed as associates, because GÉANT is a membership organization. So we have listed European NRENs as associates. And so we also referred specifically, in order to be in line with the GÉANT Infoshare project, the fact that some European NRENs could be supporting the service outreach workshops for region that are being planned out. So then they would have a similar status as the previous status, which is receive some per diem and travel costs if the trainings would take place face to face. We're quite aware of other involvement of European NRENs that support NRENs or RENs directly with externally funded projects. We have examples below of Magic and Tandem, but also we sometimes are made aware from other bilateral support and other funders that are actually intervening with NRENs directly. And another example is European NREN support with their own resources. And we know, for example, the Renater-WACRIN Memorandum of Understanding, and how strongly or how dedicated Renater is to supporting the WACRIN regional network. If you have any questions on this part of this topic, you may ask them now, or do you want Tom to do this at the end?
I suggest we complete the presentation and go to questions at the end.
Perfect, thank you very much. So then I'll leave you all in good hands with Vanessa, that will be introducing to you the specifically output number 4 and the donor engagement and advocacy work at GÉANT.
Thank you, Leila. Yes, so the next slide. My internet is a bit erratic, so I think I will turn my video off, but do let me know if at some point there's a glitch and you can't hear me. Just raise a hand and I'll stop. Okay. Like Leila mentioned, the second part of this presentation will not only assess or look at what we've been doing so far in terms of advocacy and donor engagement, who we've been reaching out to, but we'll also explore ways that we can collaborate as European NREN and as the ACP project in terms of donor engagement and establishing processes that are favorable both to us and also to European NRENs. Next slide, please. So as Leila eloquently spelled out in a previous slide, the AfricaConnect3 project has 4 main objectives, from enhancing access to tertiary education, to fostering the development of education through services, applications, and dedicated user support, to also capacity building for NRENs and for members of research and education communities. The 4th objective, which is raising the awareness of the role of digital transformation for education and research, is the one that aligns mostly with my work and also aligns quite closely with this part of the presentation. Next slide, please. So in order to emphasize the role of digital tools, in order to emphasize the value of digitalized learning, this phase of the project has been a bit more proactive in having advocacy campaigns in reaching out to relevant stakeholders, which can range from national governments to international donors. And the purpose of this has mostly been twofold. The first is to influence policy change. In the African climate, NRENs are still trying to assume this position of national stakeholder status, which can be pinned quite a lot down to policies. So a lack of governmental support, a lack of governmental policies geared towards enhancing their status or enhancing their work. The second objective is, of course, to mobilize funding, which I will explore in the next slides. So which type, I mentioned a bit in a tidbit, but which types of stakeholders are we really engaging with to ensure that awareness is heightened and everyone knows what NRENs are and their value? I've listed 5 types of agencies, and the first is national governments. Like I mentioned, they're very pivotal stakeholders, particularly in, of course, national scenes, but also regional scenes. In this little bracket, I've given some examples. This includes ministries with responsibilities in education, science, and technology. A second stakeholder are foundations, emerging donors, such as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the third, you have developmental governmental agencies. I will come back to those type of stakeholders later on in the slides. And here I've included Austrian Development Agency, like-minded organizations that share the same ethos or share the same strategies and objectives as the AfricaConnect3 project, such as NGOs and the Internet Society. And finally, multilateral organizations and forums, including the World Bank, the UN, and the Paris Peace Forum. And as mentioned by my colleagues, we are present, or at least the 4 project partners are presenting at the Paris Peace Forum this week, headed by Dr. Boubacar Berry from WACRN. So yes, next slide, please. And in terms of donor engagement, there are some actions that we partake in to fulfill those aspects. I've listed 4 here. How exactly do we go about donor engagement, or at least how do we go about supporting our partners in their pursuits of donor engagement? The first is to track relevant grants and circulate with partners. These grants obviously will be circulated based on their relevance, their feasibility, their appropriateness. Secondly, we engage with established and multilateral institutions, which, as I mentioned before, include the World Bank and the International Telecommunications Union. We also identify both global and European developmental agencies working in line, or at least having a strategy that's very similar to the objectives of AC3. And finally, we obviously offer hands-on support to our partners in case they need assistance in proposal drafting or grant application drafting. We offer support, but we also offer advice in places that it is requested. So like I mentioned, developmental aid agencies, why are these important and why have I brought them out today as key stakeholders to talk about? We recognize that these organizations often have a strategy in line with the project's ambition. Historically, these types of agencies have always had an interest in the African continent. However, more recently, their themes are also starting to explore or expand. You see that there's rising interest in education in Africa, digitalized education in Africa as well, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and also in light of more offsite learning. Secondly, we also recognize, because these are governmental agencies, that these institutions fall within the area of jurisdiction of the European NRENs. As you can see on my left, you can see CEDA, Austrian Development Corporation, Swiss. So these agencies fall within the countries, and we do recognize that we have NRENs, or at least partner NRENs, that also work in these areas. And as a result, we also recognize that their relationships could already exist between European NRENs and these agencies. If relationships don't already exist, we also acknowledge that there could be an interest by European NRENs to collaborate with these entities as well, considering that they also have an interest in education, as I previously mentioned. Next slide, please. So here we have, there's a very tentative approach, or a very tentative process that we've brought to you today. This, of course, is not written in stone, but we've established 3 possible approaches that we could use in terms of donor engagement. So the first is collaborative engagement. What this means basically is if the European NREN supports GÉANT, or at least GÉANT representatives within the project, to approach these institutions, but would prefer a collaborative approach. So they go in, the European NREN and GÉANT approach this institution together on a side-by-side basis. Secondly, the second option rather, is a GÉANT-led engagement. In this option, the respective European NREN supports GÉANT reaching out to these entities alone, but it's important to note that GÉANT will always give feedback back to the NREN, will always update them on any status changes, milestones, or any commitments made. Third, we've left that open. So in case European NRENs are not okay, or at least do not favor the 2 previous options suggested, we've also left it open where other alternatives could be decided. So whatever that is, we can have a tailor-made agreement between the specific NREN and with the project. So here I have established, or at least we have presented a 4-step process that we initially envisioned, basically as a baseline for how this engagement would take place. NRENs may wish to confirm this step-by-step process. This can obviously be tweaked. They can accept this on a default basis. So this is how they're okay with us approaching NRENs approaching institutions regardless of the status of the institution, or it can work on a case-by-case basis. So for example, in some institutions, this could work, or in another case, they would want another approach. So step 1, would be inform NREN of potential for donor engagement. So for example, if I would identify an agency that I think shares or at least has very similar interests as the AC3 project, I would inform the specific NREN that this agency falls in their jurisdiction. The second step, the NREN of course confirms how they wish to proceed, whether that's one of the 3 options that I listed in the previous slides or something else. Third, based on the opinion of the NREN, the engagement would then take place with a specific institution and agency. Fourth, of course, which is paramount, feedback will always be generated back to the NREN. So milestones, agreements, commitments, etc. Yes. So in which other ways can European NRENs help? Of course, this is a collaborative, we hope for this to be a collaborative effort. So outside of, accepting or denying certain processes, we also recognize that European NRENs are also vital stakeholders. So they could also propose other developmental agencies that the project can approach. We try to have quite a lot of oversight on these agencies, but of course, having a second pair of eyes to find adequate ones is always welcomed. Secondly, if relationships do exist, considering that these agencies are in your countries, perhaps the European NREN can link us to these agencies and allow us to establish relationships with them. Thirdly, of course, there could also be a share of best practices. So maybe European NRENs understand how to approach agencies of this stature and may be able to give us certain advices on how to do the same. Next slide. And yes, I think Tom, you can take over the slide.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Vanessa
No
and Leila previously. The idea here is that obviously there can be ongoing conversation. We can have conversation today about potential areas of interest, but obviously you may wish to go away, have thoughts and come back to us later. So to do that, it's the usual addresses in general to reach out on potential interest in involvement in AfricaConnect or other Africa REN related activities. Reach out to the International Relations team at ir@géant.org with the partner relations team in copy. But if within your NREN you have specific sort of day-to-day interests in a particular country and are wanting to find out some specific information or wanting to be put in contact with someone at either one of our regional partner networks or the national networks, please feel free to reach out directly to the international relation team members who work directly with those. So Leila for UbuntuNet Alliance, that's Eastern and Southern Africa, and for WACREN, Western Central Africa, and Helga for North Africa and ASREN. Okay, I think that's the presentation concluded. We'd like to open the floor for any general comments, questions that if anything wasn't clear or you wanted any additional information on the project in general, and then maybe after that we can then start digging in into looking at how we might be working together. I open the floor and I'm looking to see if there are any hands raised. I don't see any at present. No questions then.
Yeah, then maybe one. So
yeah, Alex.
What can we do to make it more visible and what the African NRENs could do or should do? I think that most of it is about getting funding and rolling out networks, but there's a big value of what the achievements can be in the countries. And I know from the Netherlands there are a few projects that we could work on to make those more visible, so best practices to secure the stability of these NRENs a bit more. Do you have ideas about that?
Certainly. So I'm going to briefly give a comment on that and maybe ask Vanessa and Leila to comment as well. So within the project at the moment, we're developing an advocacy and donor engagement strategy. And on the advocacy side, it is particularly looking at that, the elements within Africa to help towards sustainability, etc. And looking at who the stakeholders are that need to be engaged in, where the specific issues are that need to be addressed and how that is taken forward within the project. You know, materials that are produced that demonstrate the benefits of maybe less the AfricaConnect project, but the concept of the NRENs in general and what the services that the NRENs provide. Leila, Vanessa, would you like to add anything to that? Helga as well, please.
Maybe I can add something to that in terms of raising awareness. There is some intentionality to craft campaigns depending on the stakeholder that we're trying to talk to. So recently we have been trying to craft a somewhat toolkit campaign to reach out to EU delegations, for example, in the countries that these NRENs are in. So, you know, just tailoring the material to speak to stakeholders that we do identify. So there is that intentionality.
Okay.
And I would also encourage everyone to flag up any applications, any projects with African partner involvement, because that is for me always the way to showcasing the impact. Because if you can see how actually R&E international R&E collaborations are supported by what we are doing, by the NREN offering, on both ends, you can actually then by proxy say the project also helps. But I agree with you, Alexander, it's not just providing visibility for the project, it's the ultimate objective is to make the case for NRENs.
Make the case for NRENs and get them materials to show off what they do for their respective countries.
Exactly. But if we have also your end input, it accelerates things, because it's always a question of finding those leads. So we're always digging. And when I was part of also of the in the field team, it is always a question of digging. But I was always full of joy when these leads came directly from the partners rather than us always, or a selected few digging. Yeah. And in an ideal world, I want the African NRENs to dig deeper.
If I may, I'd like to add a little point of that. I mean, one element is the success stories that there are already, but there's also the stories where maybe there is some support already needed, that isn't, you know, a particular collaboration between countries, between Europe and a particular location in Africa that isn't supported. And if NRENs have that awareness of specific user groups, work communities that we can work to support better, that would be very, very welcome.
Eric Jan Bos, I think, has his hand raised.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yep, thank you. Looking on to what Helga just said about the African NRENs also making sure that they get what they need and making sure they can deliver on their promise. I would have expected that African regional RENs and national RENs would also have been in this Infoshare. It's great that Tom and Helga and the whole team talked to the European NRENs about the overall structure of AfricaConnect3. This is the first bootstrap, I would say, on understanding the project and taking the European NRENs along on the journey. But as a follow-up, I would really propose that we engage the African NRENs in this conversation. Because for us now, it is unclear what they would need. It is hard to understand what they would need. And how can we as European NRENs reach out to African NRENs and get them to help and offer help and do the matchmaking between what they need and what we could offer. This needs NREN to NREN collaboration. This needs European NREN and African NREN bilateral thinking. So my suggestion for the next AfricaConnect3 Infoshare is to have the African NRENs here that are participating in the project and that are, well, willing to contribute what they learned, what they have done so far, and where their needs are. And vice versa, European NRENs can perhaps take a topic and elaborate on that.
Thank you, Eric Jan. Yes, I mean, it was interesting. We did have some registrations from some of our African partners and some of the NRENs. although they don't appear to have, they haven't appeared in the conversation today. But I think there's a wider point of actually proactively chasing that as well.
Yeah, I do agree with Eric on here. It's really good when we do some matchmaking here. Right before the virus, Leila and I met Margaret Mushi from Tanzania. She came over for only 2 days, but it was really of value to speak to those people. We learn a lot from each other.
I mean, I think one of the things that interests us as well today, whilst we are here, is are there particular countries or areas where you are already aware of specific needs from your country in terms of research education collaboration in Africa?
So to add to that, or at least to the previous conversation there, that at this stage, I find it a little difficult to connect sort of activities we're doing to what is being presented here, because it looks so very much as something that is being done by the European Commission to drive out something. You know, you have a plan and you have a strategy and a project you want to execute. And I don't really see where the activities we're doing are fitting in. I don't see where we fit in. There's quite a number of, say, Nordic research projects that do landscape studies or have researchers travel to do soil studies or whatever it is in Africa and ship expensive equipment back and forth, do all kinds of things, and probably need support. But connecting from there to what was presented today is just a huge gap. I don't see any connection. And I wouldn't know where to put that in the context of what I heard today, because this has nothing to do with aid agencies and stuff. It's about, you know, 2 or 3 researchers at a agricultural university in Copenhagen working with people in Nairobi or you know wherever they are, right? And so how do we get from where we see the users to where this project is? That's the one thing. The other thing is that we have a number of initiatives that we've been trying to do in sort of this. Alexander talks about building the case for NRENs, right? We've been doing things where we invite a delegation from some country, people from their NREN, and maybe, if we can, a couple of people from the ministry to come and visit the Danish NREN or the Swedish NREN and run them around, seeing the office, talking about what is an NREN, why are we doing all this, visiting a NARC, maybe meeting somebody from a funding body, and you know, all that stuff. And that helps the NREN towards, if they bring a ministry person along, to build the case and seeing what is this actually, right? It's super hands-on and very practical, and not at all at you know, looking at the World Bank, all this big fancy stuff. It's really, really hands-on stuff that helps people create the connection, and having somebody they can call if they're in doubt, and having somebody convince, you know, somebody like Martin Beck, who you know, who's really good at convincing somebody from a developing country as to, yes, it's good to have an NREN. And those are things we happily do, and we happily take those people, if people can, you know, send us more of that kind of delegations. We have people in our region that are really good at doing this stuff, right? And they happily do a couple more. We have people who are really good at explaining to people how to run your own local Zoom instance, or get Edugain going, or whatever it is, right? But again, you talk about engaging with the NRENs, but I don't just see that engagement at a level where it's something we actually do. Yes, we can probably help you get you the phone numbers of the Danish or Swedish aid agencies, but you know, it's pretty far from our mission statement, and not really what we're doing here, right? The only thing I know that if you go and talk to them without us knowing it, there'll be hell to pay, right? Because it might, you know, end up messing with a project that the University of Copenhagen is running in Africa, something, right? And I'll be hearing from them, right? So we need that level of coordination, but really it isn't a place where I can add a tremendous lot of value. Whereas on the hands-on stuff, in, you know, helping people get going with initiatives, helping people get going with having a national or regional Zoom service, or, you know, we've had all these things where we invite engineers from African NRENs up to join our conferences, to meet our cloud people or whatever they are, and you know, get them inviting into working groups that work on how to run OpenStack or whatever it is. And you know, some of these engineers are way smarter than most of our engineers, and really contribute, right? So they're great to have on board, right? And making those connections is something we can do, because that's our mission. We are community builders. the very high level development agency policy, funding bodies, donors, I'm sure it's important, right? It's just very far from my mission statement, so difficult for me to connect.
Yes, I mean, I think you're making some good points, Lars. I mean, just to clarify, obviously within AfricaConnect, the principle of these within the DevCo projects is that there is funding to enable a lot of these activities, to provide the connectivity, to deliver IOUs for the longer term, etc. But that does also require co-funding in AfricaConnect. You know, for a lot of the connectivity, you're looking at an 80-20 share, more or less. So that means that there does need to be co-funding, and obviously with situations in many countries, there are issues. It is always a question about how that funding is going to be, co-funding is going to be provided. So that is one of the reasons why within AfricaConnect3 we put in this additional element on the donor engagement side as well as the advocacy side, and so it is to explore opportunities where there may be potential additional funding sources that can help in order to meet that requirement, and so that is part of it. But obviously there is that much bigger picture, and so we don't want to focus on just that element. We want to make sure that we are clear with you on how we will engage when we do see opportunities, and that if you do understand of opportunities within your countries of agencies that it might well be worth engaging in, that would be good. But we want to make sure there's alignment. It's essential there's alignment. We don't want to have multiple channels that, as you say, could potentially embarrass you, embarrass us, and not work. You know, we want it to be, and we want it to be efficient. And there are occasions, you know, that your support could really help and help us achieve the wider objective of making sure that that element of sustainability is contributed to.
And I do appreciate, in particular for the infrastructure build out, I do appreciate the drive to have sufficient funding to do stuff. But just to be clear, for many of these sort of practical things we can do, funding is not key. If we're to host a delegation here for a workshop for a week, which we've done several times for various emerging NRENs, we don't require money to do that. Right, we require the connections, and we require knowing that the right people come. If we have a delegation here from Mauritius who comes and gets, you know, all the introductions and shown the ropes and introduced to the right people and stuff, we need to know that we get the right people from Mauritius coming and doing that, that we have all the right people. You know, if we spend a week on that, or some travel time or whatever it is, we don't need the funding for it. It's you know, it's such a small bit of what we're actually doing, right? So funding is nice if we have to send 20 people to Africa to build up stuff and deploy infrastructures, but really, it's not the center of not about the things I think about in relation to emerging NRENs and to Africa.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Sabine maybe, because I mean, you know, Renater have been involved with WACREN in particular, and I wonder if there are any experiences that you'd like to share, Sabine, or thoughts.
Well, I think what you should be aware of is that it takes a lot of time to work with our colleagues. We have to devote time, and it's not always easy to take some time to do this work with our colleagues in Africa. But I think it's worth. I mean, spending time 2 days, for example, in a workshop where you speak about the SWATs, how they can convince their ministries, or what value they can bring to their users, for example. And I think George and Leonie are online, and this is the kind of thing we try to explain in the last WACREN webinar academy. And so I think this is very, very useful. But I think that maybe more organization between EU NRENs and GÉANT is needed. I understand what Lars is saying, and because indeed I don't know all the projects by our community in France which are linked to Africa. I know some of them because I work closely with IRD and CIRAD, which are two big research organizations which have some people which are also located in Africa. So for what they do, I know a little bit, but I'm quite sure that a lot of university or a lot of other research centers are also involved. And yeah, I think we should do something to join forces here.
Sabine, thanks a lot for that. And very, very important, right? That building up the relations and having the engagement does take time, and it does take commitment. You have to be there over several years to build up the trust and
Exactly.
the relation with somebody in, whether it's Nigeria or it's Bangladesh or whatever it is in an emerging NREN. You really have to do that. And I think one of the things that really, really would be useful is if AfricaConnect and GÉANT as you know, as the main stakeholder in AfricaConnect could act as a clearinghouse for us to understand what is going on and to coordinate what we're doing. Because if I'm in touch with people and building up relations with people in Mauritius or South Africa or Zimbabwe or wherever it is, I've worked a lot with people in Uganda, it would be really nice for me to know what other European NRENs are also engaged with these NRENs. And who are they talking to, and what are their relations, what are their activities, so I don't end up, you know, stepping on a project that Renate was trying to get going, or that I can coordinate with that, or knowing that, well, it may be that it's difficult to do the thing we're trying to do, but AfricaConnect is trying to build up, you know, new capacity for connecting these universities or that region or whatever it is in the next coming years. So it will be possible. All those kinds of things would be really, really useful, because I sometimes feel that we are sort of shouting in the forest. I know what we're doing, but I don't know what everybody else is doing. So having a forum, right, where we can share what we're doing and having visibility and transparency about what's going on would, I think, make all of us way more efficient.
And if I can add something to what you just said, Lars, and I fully agree, is that there is, I think, also a need for better knowledge of what the funding agency wants to do. And I think that being also sometimes a link between a funding and agency and another helps not to duplicate effort. I think as Stephanie is online, we can say that I thought it was very interesting to have AFD, which is Agence Française de Développement, speaking with DevCo. And I think it's good because each of the donors have their own roadmap, their own strategy, and it's good to understand where they are going so that we can build on that. So it's not only coordinating what the NRENs want to do, but it's also better knowing what the funding agency can do and have the strategy, what their strategy, in order not to duplicate effort and try to have a better, wide approach of better connectivity for research and education in Africa.
Thank you very much, Sabine, and thank you very much, Lars. So if I understand you correctly, and I think that was why we decided initially to have this discussion, we did focus it a bit more on how we could engage donors with your permission on how this would work in the processes, but we also had in mind how do we make sure that we create, or we start to think about, is there a need for a platform where we could exchange information on African activities? And now I'm hearing that you're very much inclined to having such a platform. We tried in the preparation of this meeting to start mapping which stakeholders in the European NRENs would be very much interested in having such a platform by asking some question in a survey. I'm not so sure if a lot of people have participated in the survey, but also trying to understand what were the current involvements, because I think we have the same, from our end as well, we have little oversight on what's actually taking place, and we have had some occurrences where there were some slight duplications, or one country would benefit from 3 different funding institutions and donor and trainings in the same subject in the same trimester, when other countries would not receive any support. So I do think that we could work better in making sure that there's a more transparency, exchange of information. Maybe we could all, well, we could think of how we can do this next. But when Zoom, well, when Noordunet is supporting WACRIN and with Zoom licenses, then they can say one line, Leila, this is what we're doing, and at least we put it all somewhere where everyone has access. And then before reaching out to a country or before doing an activity or on the side, you could always have a place, or come to us to ask as well, because we will always make ourselves available for bilateral calls if you want more information, but also maybe think of a place where we could have some intelligence that is gathered for everyone and where everyone can contribute. So yeah, this is something I see as really, really important, and I really see the need. So yeah, more exchange. I know as well that as part of the international relations strategy, Tom is planning on having more regular catch-ups with European NRENs on overall international relation activities, because I think this comment can go beyond the AfricaConnect project, but can actually be applicable to all international relation projects. When you're working with Latin America, when you're working with Asia, how much do you know? How much do we know what you're doing, and vice versa? So I do think that we can organize ourselves better, because as you said, I still do think that money can sometimes be a problem, but I understand the point that we can find the resources. There's so much resources in the community, so much willing to support. As Alexander said earlier, 2 days with someone face-to-face can make such a big difference and create so many connections. So we all want to go into the same direction, and I do think we can work better into getting there. So thank you very much. Yeah, it was great to see your enthusiasm about this topic. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to work with all of you.
I think, I mean, I'd like to make sure everybody else has the opportunity to make any comments that they wish, but just to pick up on that, yes, I mean, it was very much one of the elements that came out in International Strategy Workshop was this discussion on the need to make sure that there is this awareness, and we are beginning to think about how we're going to do that. So that is certainly something, and you know, today was in a sense the first step towards achieving that, the idea to have this conversation. So I think, you know, we need to look at how exactly we can coordinate this. We can make sure that this is information sharing, and it's not just between GÉANT and GÉANT NRENs and the global partners, it's also among the GÉANT NRENs, and to an extent, you know, I've seen this, for instance, you know, on the list we saw today Angola as being one of the potential connectors. There is actually R&E connectivity that lands in Angola today, but there is no NREN to in any way sort of benefit it. And then there are, you know, there's Brazil, Portugal that also potentially have interest in helping set that up. So working, you know, together and bringing those different areas of interest, you know, and potential support elements together is the objective of this overall. So I'd like to open the floor. Is there anybody else that would like to make any comments? I'm not hearing anything. I would just, you know, ask, you know, there was the survey that was sent out beforehand. Appreciate that surveys, you know, sometimes there can be a lot of surveys. I mean, is that something that you welcome in terms of way of providing at least some information initially, or is that something that you would rather find a different way and that we don't move forward with the existing survey or future surveys? I mean, I think in order to help us try and work out how we develop this, that would be input on that would be helpful as well.
I personally find that surveys are good for specifying things that are very specific, concrete initiatives, but it's difficult to talk about sort of more the fuzzy stuff, the relations, the helping each other stuff, the community building, which in many ways is the meat of the thread. It's hard to talk about it in a survey.
Yeah.
But it's a start, right, to have sort of concrete examples that we have these relations or we are working on these specific projects, certainly.
Well, I would certainly think it helps towards getting a bit more of an overview of the interests of the existing relationships and also see where synergies are possible. So for that, I would welcome a survey. But I think, I mean, from what I heard earlier on, one of the fundamental steps now forward is to really bridging between the UN NRENs and the African NRENs. Yep. So I think, I mean, obviously we need to clear that with the regional networks, organizations in Africa, but I could personally think of organizing cluster-specific sessions where such an exchange could take place, because I think if you bundle them all in, I'm not sure how much you get out. So I would suggest to make it more cluster specific, invite not just the regional network representatives, but also the NREN representatives in these clusters, and then see what that brings. You know, obviously you won't establish a relationship in one session, but it gives you that kind of foot into the door. So that would be that. I think we need more of an overview, and I say also GÉANT as organization needs a better overview of what the interests, the interests and the existing or prospective relations of the EU NREN members are, and then we can guide a little bit. But certainly, I think an immediate contact between the UN NRENs and the African NRENs is needed.
Yep. I think, Helge, there you summed up a specific follow-up action item for us to engage with the partners in Africa and propose this as workshops or however we want to construct them.
I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, Sabine is here. Obviously, she already shared her views, but we haven't got representatives of other EU NRENs that have that associate status with some of the regional networks there under AfricaConnect3, because it would be interesting also to see how they proceed with their activity plans and what they do. I mean, we don't have necessarily all that visibility because this comes with this new contractual setup under AfricaConnect3. It's the regional network organizations that are responsible for the delivery of the project in the field locally. So we get snippets, but I mean, our main role is to coordinate that they talk to each other, make sure that deliverables are being submitted and so on, and the procurement. But how they go about in delivering, in making sure services are deployed, in getting the right hands for capacity building, that is their main responsibility. So that's also something to bear in mind. It's a completely different setup as opposed to previous incarnations of the project, which brings its own challenges, but it's also one way of progressing towards sustainability for them.
Yeah, and I still think that we can help them with that, to identify their stakeholders in their countries, to make the case for their local NREN, and that brings the sustainability. And I must say that it's homework for me as well, because I don't know what my universities are doing in Africa. I have to work on that as well. But once we have identified those topics, we can make them clear to the NRENs there. And that would really help in my mind. Because it's not only about rolling out fiber and putting the plugs on the infrastructure. It must bring value. And it's a chicken and egg situation. I can see that. But we have to approach both ends here.
I agree with you, Alexander. I think that the aim is for our constituency, our users, to be able to work end to end both in education and both in research centers. So fully agree. Sorry, I have to leave you by now. So I will see the rest of the InfoShare recorded. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your
Bye,
contribution,
everybody.
Sabine.
I have to leave as well, to be honest.
Okay, well thank you very much. Yes, it's already 2 o'clock. I don't know, different people's lunch times maybe, as well, and other meetings, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I mean, just a comment there. It is, I mean, at the end of the day, the overall objective is to support users end to end. And there's another element that, you know, this advocacy work is there's potentially quite a lot of work that needs to go into it. And if we've got a wider pool that can help engage in that, that is a strong benefit, and particularly where you can direct it towards a very specific case, so that, you know, when you are talking to stakeholders that have, you know, potential influence in improving the circumstances for an NREN and then delivery of services, you've got an argument to say, you know, if you don't support this NREN, this will not happen. You will not, your users, your country will not be able to benefit in the way that ideally they should be benefiting.
Yeah. I have to go. Sorry.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. I'd like to, you know, we've still got some time left in the schedule. On the AfricaConnect team that's here, or on the NRENs, are there any other questions or comments that you'd like to share? I'd like to take the opportunity to make sure we have covered everything we want to cover today. And if not, then I think I would thank everybody for your participation. I think, you know, the interest we're seeing from the NRENs in Europe in these international activities overall is very encouraging, very positive, and we really do want to make sure that we can move forwards together on looking for synergies in areas where we can improve the situation together globally. Thank you also to Leila and Vanessa for their presentations, and we'll be looking into some workshops with our regional partners and their NRENs in the coming weeks, and work out how to put that together. Okay.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you all. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.